lot of those takes and that angry energy is leading to some seriously, what I would say, questionable behavior in response in terms of protest and backlash. And so this is going to get a little complicated and a little nuanced, like these shades of gray of protest versus crime versus okay protest versus illegal protest and what's more. But let's just start with what's going on that like we all agree is bad and wrong. Since this leak, there's been a number of incidences of vandalism or arson, like burning down or vandalizing anti-abortion groups or clinics. This is something that in the past has happened to pro-abortion clinics and places. Mm-hmm. And like hard stop, we both agree that that's wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, we've talked about this, I think, when we covered our abortion views on the show a few months ago, but like, I've never been in favor of people who are like out protesting at clinics and trying to criminalize mothers. And I mean, the pro-life side can get very anti-life pretty quick on this issue too. But obviously the fallout's going in the other direction this time around. And there's been a lot of very serious threats of violence made against pro-life entities. There's been issues around vandalism, some arson, targeting anti-abortion groups and their clinics. So they also have, clinics on the other side that are like family clinics where they try to help you keep your child. And even like there's been some threats against churches, which this really hit home for me. We saw an article at Fox News talking about how Senator Mike Lee is trying to petition the U.S. Attorney General, Merrick Garland, to basically beef up security around church services. So there's been a lot of threats of terrorism made to them. I'll tell you something you might not know as a pastor's kid. Churches are often under threat. There's often violence at churches. My dad taught at the seminary in Louisville for a number of years. He has had 2 of his former students gunned down in the pulpit and killed in various churches. And you hear about the big news stories, when there's like a mass shooting at a church, but smaller incidents of violence often happen as well. Sometimes it's family violence that carries over to the church, like parents showing up and trying to kidnap their kids out of the nursery, or like a violent ex-spouse like knows that their wife goes to church every day at 10 a.m. and shows up. So like there's that kind of stuff that goes on. There's a lot of people who are mentally unwell who are around churches, and so that can lead to some violence. And then there's people who just flat out hate churches and hate pastors and want to kill them. And so even on a rank and file Sunday, my dad's very blessed. He has a very large church and it has the finances to do this, but they always have an immense amount of security. We actually hire police to be at his church on the premises throughout all of the services. And then on top of that, they have like an undercover volunteer unit in the church where a lot of retired cops and detectives, and even my mom, because she's a great shot, undergo training and carry on a rotation. Mama Cox. Yes, Mama Cox is not playing around. So that's, my dad's church is pretty locked down and secure, but a lot of churches cannot afford to do that. And there's been some real concerns that we could see churches, bombed or targeted by pro-abortionists, which is just really crazy.
Yeah, it's horrible that that's necessary. I'm glad they're able to get the protection they need at your dad's church, but it's horrible that that's necessary.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, like most or the vast majority of everyday Democrats or pro-abortion people would condemn that behavior instantly. I think that is the same way almost all pro-lifers, except for the most radical fringe, would condemn the people who bomb abortion clinics, right?
Certainly,
and
yeah.
So that's the stuff that's kind of easy. It's like that is clearly in the immoral zone. But what we're about to get to is where it starts to get gray. So a progressive group has published the addresses of the various Supreme Court conservative justices who are, potentially going to, it's just a draft, but potentially going to overturn Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey. So this is reporting from National Review. In response to the Monday night leak of a draft Supreme Court opinion that would overturn Roe v. Wade, a leftist group called Ruth Sent Us, presumably that's like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, posted what it claims are the home addresses of the court's 6 conservative justices online in preparation for an organized walk-by protest set to take place outside the justices' homes next week. They sent dispatched demonstrators to the homes of the 6 extremist justices, that's in quotes, according to their website. And now we're starting to see these scenes. Take a listen and watch to these videos. This first clip is from a protest at Justice Samuel Alito's house.
Pro-life is a right!
You don't care if people die!
Pro-life is a right!
You don't care if people die!
Pro-life is a right!
You don't people die.
The government is a lie.
You don't care if people die.
And now this one is from the home of Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
My body. My body. My choice. My body. My choice. My body. My choice. My body. My choice. My choice. My choice. My choice. My body. My choice. My choice.
So Hannah, let's talk about this because I am very uncomfortable with this form of protest. I'm all about protests, but I think when you're going to people's homes and like scaring their children inside and their wives, and then their neighbors, I just think it crosses a line for me.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's very shaky ground, right? Like, I think certainly legally they have the right to do this, to be totally honest. And I want to make that really clear. Obviously, this has not been a norm throughout most of our history, and it's not really where you want your politics to be, this kind of fever pitch level that we've seen that I feel like you and I have had to grow up in, but like other generations didn't. And I think it's causing a lot of anxiety in the culture and animosity where it's just like, God, it never stops. You know, it's just this constant state of like panic and outrage, and I think it's starting to trickle over to these kinds of displays now, and things like, you know, the Black Lives Matter protests and the January 6th Capitol event. It's all these things where it's like, these are not things you saw before really in our country, and I don't know where it ends. So I think that's a little scary. Obviously, I'm always concerned with violence. While I think people have the right to protest and certainly have the right to protest government officials, you know, of course, you become concerned they're outside somebody's home that it could escalate and innocent people could be harmed. As the daughter of a public figure, you know, this is something like I very much empathize with. Like, it's not your fault what your dad or mom does in their position of power, and you're kind of just at the mercy of that. You don't always necessarily even agree with those decisions, you know, and when somebody goes into office, like, they put their family through a lot. You know, you're signing up to really put at the very least, make them public targets, and these kinds of things can be repercussions. As a whole, my general takeaway is like, you know, this is the repercussion of having a government that's too big. There should be no need for people to feel they need to go protest outside of Supreme Court justices' homes. That being said, though, like, in a representative democracy, at some point, like, if you feel you need to take it there to defend your rights and your liberties, I understand that too. So it really does feel like a very nuanced kind of situation to me.
Yeah, for me, I think we need to, at least what I would personally say, is like a line in the sand, no protests at public figures' homes. Because you and I, we're not nearly as big public figures as the Supreme Court, right? But we're public figures, and they could do it to us. And I think it's a little different as well with judges versus politicians. I would be opposed to it in any case, but a judge is here to, you know, they should be, right, passing like a neutral decision on law or on a case that's before them. And you're there pressuring them with like these implicit threats, like when you're going there. Or for example, the mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, today, she tweeted something like, "We need to take up arms against this the court and this decision." And or
I'm like, is this woman drunk tweeting? Like, Miss Mayor of Chicago all of a sudden is pro 2A? Like, what am I reading? But basically, like, she was trying to say, like, they're coming for LGBTQ rights next, which I don't believe is true, and saying that they need to take up arms and self-defense. I don't know, Brad, I got to push back a little bit, though, because, you know, judges are not elected, but they have a lot of control over our lives. I would argue more than many politicians do, and we have fewer recourses to actually go up against them and make our voices heard or push back. So, like, I get protesting judges. I really do.
But why can't you protest them at the Supreme Court, on the steps of the court?
I would. And I want to be clear, like, the difference in me and these protesters, like, I believe in peaceful protest. I actually give a speech all over the country about how that is the thing that is most expedient to advance political change. So it's not only, I think, the morally right way to get things done, it's actually the most effective way to get things done. This is not what I would advocate for or suggest, but I get it. Let me compare it to this. This is how it makes me feel. When the people of Minneapolis, where George Floyd was killed?
Yeah.
Minneapolis. When the people of Minneapolis burnt down that police station, I kind of liked it a little bit. And am I going to go do it? Is it effective? Is it right? No. But like, was I kind of there for it? Yes, because at some point you overthrow corrupt governments. And my favorite piece of history of all time, if you don't know about it, you should look it up. It's called the Battle of Athens. And it's about a town called Athens, Tennessee, where after World War II, there was all kinds of corruption. The police were corrupt. They were throwing away votes, rigging elections, just really corrupt small town stuff. And the men got back from World War II and they picked up their guns and they went to town. They shot the police station. They took the town back and they won. And to some extent, like, that's kind of how the country was supposed to function. They said, if this isn't working anymore, rip it up and start again. So, like, at some point I get going to extremes to overthrow government institutions that are corrupt and that are, you know, taking people's lives and taking away their rights. But the line is fuzzy is what I'm trying to say, I think, of like when that point is. Do I think it's when they overturn Roe? No. But I understand that sentiment that some people have and feeling like the government might force you to carry a pregnancy, especially a dangerous pregnancy for you, like that could put your life in danger as a woman. I mean, I really do see where some people are coming from on this.
Yeah, I understand the energy behind doing something like protesting at a home or even like burning down a police station. But for me, it crosses a line I would never support. And I think you feel the same way. But it's like, it also becomes counterproductive. For example, the Black Lives Matter cause received this huge swell of support. But then after the death of George Floyd, and there was all this talk about reform, and that died for a lot of reasons. But the public opinion polling on BLM went down over the next several months as these images of these, you know, not at all, a lot of the protests were peaceful, but at night, a lot of them turned into riots and there was looting and there's buildings burned down. And then that's, you know, flashed on the cable coverage every day for the next 6 months. Right. And it ended up actually seeing a real tanking in the polls of support for BLM, those tactics. So I think it's generally counterproductive.
They literally burned their support to the ground.
Yeah, I think it's also generally, you're right. Like this idea that, oh, well, our rights are at stake. It's okay to do drastic measures for a drastic issue. The problem I have with that is that in today's politics, everyone thinks everything is a drastic issue. Nancy Pelosi said President Trump's tax cuts would kill people. Yes, seriously. And you can find some similar stuff on the right. Like if we lose this election, the left will destroy America or whatever. And it's like when the stakes are constantly in some people's minds at that level, to me, that's a recipe to having everyone harassed in their homes. But I want to get into something because I think you said this already, and I want to make my position clear. I do believe that a peaceful protest outside someone's home, not on their property, but outside in the street or whatever, should be, while I disagree with it, it should be constitutionally protected First Amendment speech in most cases. However, it may, under our current legal regime, it may not be, I'm learning, as this discussion is playing out. Apparently there's a federal law and a similar law here in Virginia where the judges' houses are that criminalizes, it's 18 USC in the federal code, section 1507, picketing or parading. And I just want to read this law to folks. And it says, whoever, with the intent of interfering with, obstructing, or impeding the administration of justice, or with the intent of influencing any judge, juror, witness, or court officer in the discharge of his duty, pickets or parades in or near a building housing a court of the United States, or in or near a building or residence occupied or used by such judge, blah, 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 they shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year. So this is something we have to flesh out because apparently what they're doing is illegal, but that law seems very hard to square with me with the First Amendment.
Yeah, how in the world did this get passed? I mean, I know how, because it benefits the people who were passing it. Like, right, like, yeah, you're not going to get to protest us anywhere near where we are, but like, that's corrupt, and I don't know how that could possibly be constitutionally sound, and I feel like that's probably why it's not enforced.
It wasn't enforced in Virginia, for example. Those protesters weren't arrested, though a lot of people on the right were calling on Youngkin to round them up. And I'm like, well, it'll be you next time, so chill with that. But yeah. I'd also say this, like, the Supreme Court has long upheld time, place, and manner restrictions on speech. Like, so you have the First Amendment right to go out with your bullhorn and say, abortion is healthcare, or abortion is murder. you're not legally allowed to do that in a residential neighborhood at 4 a.m. on a Tuesday, because they've been able to pass restrictions that aren't content-based, that just regulate the time, place, or manner of speech. And that has been upheld. But this seems like taking that to the extreme. You're not allowed to do anything, basically, to influence any judge, right? Like, that seems like that should literally be our right. And
I mean, how is even protesting outside the Supreme Court itself illegal then?
It apparently wouldn't be under this law. It's just not enforced, I guess. But, and that would also be a problem, selectively enforcing it against pro-abortion people. While I disagree with them, I don't believe in selective enforcement of the law. So I think this is a real problem. But then again, like, how are we supposed to rely on judges to strike down a law as violating the First Amendment when the law specifically protects judges? Like, I know. It's paradox
like this
of our legal
immunity
system.
Thing that we have is like so circular. Like, they're never going to overturn their own immunity from being sued. Like, how do you get rid of it? You know, it's just constant corruption around here.